Hello everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. We're big, we're bad, and we're back with another Fact Friday. So we have some wonderful questions this week. If you haven't already, please subscribe. You can hit the notification bell and then you will be notified when we have a new video. And of course, you can go to producelikeapro.com, sign up for the email list, and get a whole bunch of free goodies. Okay, well, this question jumped out at me. Eric scoured the questions and came up with this one. I think it's going to open up a lot of discussion, so be prepared to discuss. I've heard that some engineers run their mixes through a stereo preamp before using mix bus compression. What do you think about this approach? I own a Rupert Neve 5012, I suppose that could be a 5012 preamp, which accepts line levels, and was thinking about trying it on a mix. Are there any pitfalls? I love this question because it opens up such a massive amount of discussion. There is no pitfalls in using high quality hardware in that particular instance. All Rupert Neve design stuff is absolutely superb, whether it be mic pre's, whether it be all the way back when he ran Neve as the company, all the way through, when he was running Focusrite, and now, of course, his own company, Rupert Neve. Well, they were all his own companies, but you know what I mean, his current company. So, yes, you could go line level in and get a little bit of coloration, maybe some of the transformers to add some, I'm going to use the word, yes, I'm going to do it, warmth, which is basically just some weight, something that just makes it feel a little bulkier. I don't know how transformative it is, but it might be just enough to round off a couple of spiky transients slightly, and you might find it very pleasing. I wouldn't be surprised if you did, because of course Rupert Neve stuff is absolutely superb. But I suppose the question is why? And the reason why I say that is what problem you're trying to solve. If you're talking about Rupert Neve design preamps and stuff like that, highly recommend them. Highly recommend any incredible preamp like the Rupert Neve, the BAE, all the ones we use are all absolutely superb pieces of equipment. But what I would say is use them all the way across your recording. If you're just a mixer, I get it. If you're just a mixer and you're given some very highly digital sounding, that's the wrong word because that's so pretentious, digital sounding, but you know what I mean. If something is very brittle, doesn't seem to, feel that smooth, and you're trying every trick in the book to round off some of those transients, to even out that high end, and of course, every trick you can think of. But I don't know if I would just stick it on my master bus. If I was going to do what you're talking about and you're only mixing and you're not tracking, then I'd probably run everything through it individually, quite frankly. I remember working with Dave Sardi on Hot Hot Heat. Remember that band, Canadian band, wonderful. And we took the lead vocal, comped it in Pro Tools, and then dumped it back onto, I think it was 1/2 inch or maybe 1 inch tape, hit it pretty hard, and then re-imported it back into Pro Tools. And we got the sound of the tape, and of course, running through all that beautiful analog equipment. It was nice. It really smoothed out the vocal in a really beautiful way. So you could, if you really want to utilize this idea of going back through some analog equipment, do multiples. Maybe take your drum bus. Once you've got a drum mix up, sum that through it. Maybe once you've got your guitars in a stereo mix, sum that through it. That, I think, frankly, would give you a lot more control. One of my fears is when you go back through something stereo like that, to slam it hard. Not that it would be necessarily bad, it's just you're kind of hitting it with a sledgehammer and hoping for the best. I feel like you could get a lot more creative by doing individual elements and then summing those back together. And this is just the answer if you're only mixing. If you're tracking, take that beautiful Rupert Neve preamp and use it on everything. Use it on all of the sources, and then you won't need to necessarily use it on the end because you already have imparted that beautiful sonic feeling of a Class A, really well-made mic pre everywhere along the chain. Now, the reality is there's so many incredible, amazing plugins now that emulate, transformers, tape, the saturation and distortion you get from those mediums, all are available. But there's something beautiful about using a nice microphone going into a nice mic pre and doing a lot of the work for you without you even thinking about it. You just plug in the mic, put it into the pre, print it, and you're like, oh, that sounds good. It does a heck of a lot of work for you. It's the same as having an amazing musician that you don't have to edit. That's why many people still love using good analog equipment going in. It's really probably the last frontier of analog equipment, let's be honest. Because now so many people, the biggest names in music, are mixing and mastering entirely in the box. I can think of a couple of great mastering engineers that don't break out anymore, and they just stay entirely in the box. So it's becoming very, very prevalent. So yes, by all means, try it. If you already own the piece of equipment, try it. But if you're talking about trying to solve it in the best possible way and impart that analog goodness that you're talking about from a Rupert Neve piece of equipment, use it in the recording process as much as possible. Only stick it on the master bus at the end if you really feel like you didn't get what you wanted during the recording process. But it's a good thing to try. And to be honest, it won't hurt. It might round it off too much for you if you've already done a ton of work. But my point is like print a mix through it and see if it's better. See if you like the sound of it. I do know that many people love, still, when they can, printing to 2-track tape, printing to a 1/2 inch or a 1 inch, and then importing that back in or just sending that to a mastering engineer. There's still a handful of great mastering engineers that master off of tape. Almost all the big guys and girls, they all have a 1/2 inch or 1 inch machine ready to go. It's not that long ago, and there's still, of course, many of them are going back through old albums and remastering them off of 1/2 inch and 1 inch, even 1/4 inch tape. So, try it. It's not a bad idea. Rupert Neve makes incredible stuff, so knock yourself out. I mean, get back to us and let us know. So what do you guys and girls think? Do you use analog equipment in that way, just to sum? I'm a little bit of a weird one with this one. Lots of people make summing amps that don't have transformers on each individual input. They just have a stereo pair of transformers. So they'll take like 8 or 16, 8 stereo or 16 mono inputs or whatever it is into a box and then sum them to a pair of transformers. And that's like, doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, yeah, just go into your Neve. But if you've got maybe each one of those inputs has its own transformer on and is imparting that sound that we like the transformers get, that makes some sense to me. That slight coloration in each one of those elements makes sense. That's why many people use the Cloud Lifter or the Soyuz launcher. They have transformers in them. They impart a little bit of that. The reality is these are the things we're always looking for to kind of glue our music together a little bit more. Anyway, what do you do? How do you solve this problem? It's if it's even a problem for you, but how do you use analog equipment in your mixing process, if at all? Many of us like hybrid. I still mix hybrid through the console a lot, as well as mixing in the box. I spread it around. When I'm working with a lot of the legacy artists, like the Rick Springfields and the Ace Frehlers and stuff, that is all mixed in a hybrid fashion. It's a sound that they want. And it's a sound that I still absolutely, completely and utterly love. Love it. But you can get incredible mixes in a box. And very recently, I've been beating my console mixes in the box. We've been going back to old songs, even live on the streams that you've been involved in, and going, oh, this is much better in the box. So, what do you do? Do you incorporate analog stuff in your mixing process? Let us know. There's a couple of good questions left that I think would be really, really fun to answer. And they both are pertaining to schooling and internships. I've yet to get to the intern stage. Can one be a sound engineer without going to school for it? This is my opinion on schooling or not schooling. I only have one opinion, and it's really simple. If you absolutely love going to school, if you love the social aspects, if you love being in a classroom, if you love all of the things that you associate with schooling, with college, if you love all of that stuff, because the social aspects are huge, everything. If you love that, then go there because you will get something out of it. Lots of people like learning in classroom situations. They like learning from a tutor, a teacher, a professor, whatever you want to say. That's the way that they like to learn. If that's you and you want to go to a university or a recording school and learn, then all for it. I particularly like universities. My good friend Michael Starkad teaches at IU, Indiana University, and those are proper degree courses. And so when I have interns come through from that school or equivalent schools, I'm always impressed because I know they've spent several years learning. It shows a sort of level of discipline that I admire. However, not everybody's into going to school. I didn't. I'm not into it. I'm not into sitting in classrooms for 3 or 4 hours. It's just not what I'm about. I'm not into writing papers. I'm a doer. I just like to plug stuff in. I'm a musician. Play with it. Twist knobs. Have some fun. That's me. And I started making money professionally at the age of 16, playing in bands. So I've always made money in music my whole life. So for me, I sort of skipped down there. I remember talking to Scott Devine of Scott's Bass Lessons. We all know Scott, great guy. Scott told me that he wanted to go to Leeds, which is arguably one of the best music schools in the world. Leeds College of Music is amazing. I spoke there. It's a wonderful, wonderful school. He wanted to go there, and he decided, it was like the summer, he would take a gig on a cruise ship. And I think he was 18 years old. He's on the cruise ship. He's getting paid, he said it was a fairly decent wage, and he was playing on the cruise ship, and he was the youngest guy in the band. And he started talking to the other guys and girls in the band, and he found out that 2 or 3 of them had gone to Leeds College of Music, which was great. But then when he got home, he said he woke up one day and went, wait there. So I'm going to go to a music school to go and get a gig, doing a gig that I could already do without doing the school. If you're faced with those kind of discussions, and don't get me wrong, Leeds is amazing, probably would have accelerated his jazz learning and all this stuff. I'm sure in hindsight, he probably would have done it. But my point is like, who are you? Are you somebody that likes schooling? Are you somebody that's more pragmatic about it and just likes to get stuck in? That is the question you need to ask yourself. And the answer to the question is no, you do not need to. In fact, every single one of the people that I admire and that I'm close with, none of them went to any kind of music school. Jack Douglas, Shelley Yakis, the great Roy Sakala, God rest his soul, Jay Messina, all of those guys, they all learned on the job. Maybe they interned, but they definitely ran, getting food, running cables, before even becoming an assistant. And then they became an engineer, and then eventually they became producers and mixers and all the other great things that these guys did. So you don't have to, but the studio system is shrinking. There aren't as many opportunities. So maybe going to school, if it's an opportunity for you, it's not a bad way to get onto a console if you want to learn what consoles do. Get into a program which is teaching you basic programming, drum programming, synth stuff. I mean, there's all the schools now are covering every genre, from recording a classical or a jazz band all the way up to building beats and everything in between. It is very, very different now. The landscape's much better. They really are going out of their way to really, really help. This is not your old music school of 25 years ago. Everything is much, much better now, far more advanced, and all genres are coped with. And you can go and check every single music school and find the one close to you that does it. Eric, for instance, went to Citrus, which is a community college, and he learned a lot of stuff there. So, and I'm sure that wasn't expensive. I mean, was it free, community college?
It wasn't free, but it was very inexpensive.
Like hundreds of dollars.
Hundreds.
Yeah, so it's like a few $100s. So depending on what country you're in, depending on what county you're in, depending on what state you're in, there's probably going to be lots of options to learn. Again, comes back to that question of how do you like to learn? I have always harbored this desire to go back to school to get a degree in music, because even though I've made a living from music, I don't have a degree in it. There's a little thing that kind of bugs me that I don't have an official degree in it. But at the same time, I make a really good living doing music. So, yeah, But you can tell it's a little bit of a bug for me. So I think you have to ask yourself that question. Are you somebody that loves school? And if you are, go and do it. And I completely support it. And it doesn't have to be expensive. You can go to community colleges that are great. But if you have the budget and you want to go to a specialized school, you can do it too. Otherwise, find yourself a local producer, a local studio, and go in there and intern and learn the ropes. And buy a little studio equipment, a few $100s worth of studio gear, and start making music on your own. Could I intern at the age of 16 with little or no knowledge about audio engineering? Well, firstly, I don't know if that's legal in many countries. I think in America, you'd probably have to be 18. It's possible in the UK and Europe that you could at 16, but I definitely don't believe that would be possible in America. I think you'd have to be 18 years old, or else you'd have to have your parents' permission to sign off before you're 18. That's something you're going to have to check in with your local laws in your state, in your county, in your country. Find those things out first of all. But just to answer it as a general question of like, can you do it when you're young, when you're a teenager? Yes, why not? I mean, that's probably the time to learn. Like I said, I left home at 16 and I joined a band in the north of England and we played covers, and I did that for 2 years and I had an absolute blast and loved it, playing covers of great songs every single night in working men's clubs, in pubs, in bars, in clubs, and anywhere you could think of. I remember playing in Scotland in a pub, and the stage was so small that I had to stand in the fireplace. And the fire was going. So I was standing in the front of the fireplace, legs pretty much on fire, so hot, playing guitar. The amp was like nestled just to the right-hand side. I've done them all. I remember being at a show when there were some people trying to topple our van outside that were in some big, huge fan. I remember carrying an Ampeg 8x10 up outside fire escape about 5 or 6 stories up, and that was the first gig I'd ever done with that band. And I remember thinking to myself, is every gig I'm going to do carrying an Ampeg 8x10 up 5 or 6 flights of fire escape outside of a building? Luckily, it was the worst thing I'd done with an Ampeg, as far as I can remember. But my point is like, I've done all of those things. It was an amazing, amazing experience. And I did all of those. That was my internship as a teenager. So if you get an opportunity, take it. But you're going to have to find somewhere or someone that you can work with. Do your parents have friends that work in the music industry? Do you have school friends that parents work in the music industry? Is there any kind of way you can get into a place? If you don't have those kind of situations, scour online and find local studios. Type in your town name, your village name, and then type in, recording studio. Does one come up? If it doesn't, go to the next major city, the next major town. Do it, and then just hit them up. Call them, email them, follow up. Eric, how many people did you write to for your internship for me?
Over 10.
Over 10. How many people responded?
Just you?
Just me. So there you go. That's the way it is. You've got to be persistent. You've got to be persistent. If you want to work with somebody, or you want to work at a studio, or a community college that has bands playing, that needs somebody to run front of house. Lots of schools have little recording studios that are kind of obsolete. There's all kinds of random opportunities you could get. You've just got to seek them out and be willing to do what it takes to get into a situation to make music. But as far as your age of 16, you're really going to have to check on your country, your county, your state's laws. And then, at that tender age, you may have to get your parents' permission, or you might not be able to do it. It really depends on where you live. But I wish you all the best. It's a fantastic question. I wish you all the best. So, thank you, everybody. Please leave a whole bunch of comments and questions below. A little bit more of the intern discussion is great, but I also would love to know about how you feel about analog equipment. Are you still using any kind of analog equipment outside of a microphone and an interface? If you're using external pre's, what external pre's are you using? If you are summing, this is the big one. If you're summing through a summing amp, what is it? What is the summing amp you're using? Does it have transformers on every channel? That to me is the big deal. I think just having a pair of transformers on a master bus is not enough for me. If it's a summing amp, then it needs transformers on every one because it needs the character applied to every single one. Otherwise, just do what our friend was suggesting here and put it through a mic pre. All right. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing, and we'll speak to you all again very, very soon. Adios. Auf Wiedersehen. Au revoir. Farewell.